All right, everyone. So here is our post Sodom and Amorah video and formative. So the final comment that we receive from Reuven Kimmelman is this idea that once divine justice has been confirmed, once Abraham knows that God is just, then we can get to the binding of Isaac's story. And so, according to our author, the Torah kind of goes like this. First Sodom and Amorah, and right afterwards we see this story. But what he gets a little bit wrong here is that there are actually three stories in between. And the question is, what role do those stories also have to play in Abraham's development as a hero, in Abraham's relationship with God, in Abraham's relationship with his wife and with his family? So we kind of have to view these as well and ask what they are adding to the picture. So at one point, I think we'll be able to actually go ahead and fill out a chart that looks a lot like this. That what's the big takeaway from the Sodom and Amorah moment? And then what is, and I offered actually 4 potential takeaways, and some people had some different ideas here of which one they thought was correct. And then the question is, what does each of these next stories kind of tell us as far as, God, Abraham's big takeaway, and how will that kind of set the stage for, for the final story of really Abraham's kind of journey in some sense. Although we do see a little bit after that, but I think most of the journey, it culminates really with the Akedat Yitzchak, or the binding of Isaac. So here we go, and we read actually a little bit of what this story here is all about, and you asked some questions right before we left class today as we read. And you'll notice that, right, so this story is a story right here called, right, The Wife as Sister Take Two. Now, to complicate matters a little bit more, right, one question that we had was, didn't we hear this story already? Didn't we hear this story way back before? Where was that story? Who was the one who brought it up? If you look at all these episodes, which episode was it when we heard about this story of Abraham kind of saying that his wife Sarah is actually his sister in order in some way to save himself, right? And Kelvin brought up something in class that we need to kind of keep in mind, that as Kelvin was reading this, and as I hope we will all begin to do, and that's one of the goals of this formative today, is to say, as we're reading this story about wife and sister, we need to keep in mind the last story we said as well, and we need to kind of look at the similarities and specifically look at the differences. But to complicate matters even more, check out this story, which doesn't happen to Abraham, but actually happens to the son we have not yet met yet, to Isaac and his wife Rebekah. There was a famine in the land, aside from the previous famines that had occurred in the days of Abraham. And Isaac went to Abimelech, king of the Philistines, in Gerar. God had appeared to Isaac and said, "Do not go down to Egypt. Stay in the land which I point out to you. Reside in the land, and I will be with you and bless you. I will assign all these lands to you and your children, fulfilling the oath that I swore to your father Abraham." So we remember there's a famine in the land. Abraham does go down to Egypt, and that's where Abraham's very first story about calling Sarah his sister instead of his wife. Isaac is being told here, there's a famine in the land, but do not go down to where you were found help before, right? So isn't that strange, right? Any idea of why that might be happening? Why he's told not to go down, and then yet we see, we'll just check out what comes next, right? I will make your children as numerous as the stars. I have assigned your children to the land, so that the nations of the earth shall be blessed by your children. So Isaac stayed in Gerar. When the men of the place asked him about his wife, Isaac said, "She is my sister." For he was afraid to say, "my wife," thinking, "the men of this place might kill me on account of Rebekah because she is beautiful." Oh my goodness. So now all of a sudden we have not one story of a wife being called a sister, not two stories of a wife being called a sister. We actually have a third story of a wife being called a sister. Two of the stories have to do with Abraham, and one has to do with Isaac and Rebekah. So what's the big question that we're going to have at this moment? Right? And additionally, give me a kind of a very rudimentary kind of idea of why. Why do we have these three stories that are so similar? What are we supposed to be learning from this in the Torah? And I'll show you a little bit later this quote again by Ed Greenstein, who says, listen, the Torah decides what to tell us and what not to tell us. It's telling us stuff that it thinks is important, and telling us stuff that it doesn't think, and not telling us stuff it doesn't think is important. So all of a sudden, we don't know anything about Abraham during the first 75 years of his life, but for some reason the Torah decides to tell us of not one, but two stories of Abraham passing off his wife as a sister, and one story about Abraham's son doing the exact same thing. What do you make of it? Okay, and now it's time to go a little further. So I want to bring up an amazing piece from this book, The Art of Biblical Narrative. You've seen me refer to it before. Actually, from this book is all the ideas of different techniques of how we're supposed to read the Torah more closely. And he's going to introduce something now, but he does it in a beautiful way. So let's give it a try. Let's imagine that the year is 2800, okay? And instead of being 2022, I guess I wrote this in 2022, it's 2026 right now, so I taught this course 4 years ago, so I'm using it from there. I'm sorry about that. Researchers are looking back on what life was like way back when in our times. And as part of the research, they uncover 12 Western movies. And they sit down and they watch all of them in an attempt to learn about what society was like in early America, right? They have no idea what a Western is. They have no idea what this is all about. They're basically researchers kind of trying to understand what life was once like, okay? And so here's what they see. They see 12 watch 12 different Westerns. There's 12 here, right? And they notice in all the ones they've circled, they've noticed something very similar, except for the one that I haven't circled. So check this out. What they notice is that in 12 of those 13 stories, they notice a very similar hero. They have a hero who has a gun, who can draw that gun quickly, who basically wins over the bad guy, okay? So they see that same story, same thing happening in each and every one of those 12 stories, except for one. There's one story where actually the hero of the story does not have a working hand. And the hero of that story carries not a small gun, but a large rifle. And the hero of that story wears the gun on his back. Okay, so we have 12 stories that appear very similar. And then we have one story of someone, of kind of what we call an outlier. So here we are, the researcher, trying to kind of make sense of this story. They're trying to say, what is going on? How can there be all of these stories about that seem very similar and one story that's actually different? Okay, and this is Robert Alter imagining what these researchers says, and they would say the following. They might say, here's their theory. Back in the early 1800s, There was a group of people who had a special genetic mutation that allowed them to draw their gun faster than others. These people were part of an elite family who had the highest position in this society. And they passed this genetic mutation only on to their children. And in that way, they dominated life in the early American West. And then they turned to this other story and they said there's in another part of the US, a different but rarer genetic mutation allowed people the dexterity of reaching behind their back to bring forward a gun that was carried behind them. This was a rarer mutation and was restricted to a small geographic area. Okay? So here's what Robert Alter says next. Why was the hypothesis of this researcher so wrong? Of course the hypothesis of this researcher is so wrong, right? Because this researcher, looking at all these 13 stories, sees this one anomaly. And so they're saying there must have been back then, way back when, a group of people who had one genetic mutation and a group of people who had another genetic mutation. Okay? And this is what Robert Alter says. No. These researchers got it wrong because they didn't know about convention. What's a convention? A convention is a sophisticated set of agreements between a writer and the audience about how an event normally unfolds. What does that mean? So how does a Western normally unfold? We know this without even thinking about it. We know that when we watch a Western movie, that A, the good guy always wins, that 2, the win will always take place in a showdown between a good and an evil person in an empty Western town, and 3, the good guy will be the guy who draws the gun faster than the bad guy. Okay? So the fact that a good guy can draw his gun quicker is not something that we need to even explain. It's a necessary ingredient of a Western. It's the convention of a Western. And once we understand the convention of a Western, we can then look at that one film as the wrinkle. Because this man, the man who has the arm that he would normally draw his gun with, he can't hold his gun in the normal way. So he finds a different way to do what the other good guys do, which is reach in back and find the gun and use a rifle to shoot. Okay? It's only by understanding the normal way that things are, which we call the convention, that we can pay attention to the differences and see them as stuff that's important. Okay? So let's again try to understand this again. So what Robert Alter is saying is, when we look at differences, we can kind of understand. A researcher would look at this and say there are 2 different types of people, 2 different types of not normal. Okay? One who lived over here, one who lived over here. And those not normal over here had a genetic mutation that made them elite, and the not normal over here had a genetic mutation that was elite, that made them unique. But we know that actually that's not true. We know that every Western that we see always has certain elements of it, and those elements are taken for granted. We don't even think that they're important. They're only important when something is a little off that makes us ask the question, how is this person who is not able to do the normal thing, how will they actually do the normal thing? How will they have a showdown with an evil guy in an empty town if they aren't able to hold up the gun in a normal way? So what Robert Alter is saying is, if we don't understand that there's a normal way that things happen, and if we're not in tune with that as a reader, then we think that everything that happens is not normal, and we can't focus on all the stuff that's normal and the one or two things that are not normal. Okay? So let's try this in our real life as well. Okay? What is the convention of an Orange County kid living in Orange County in 2025? What are the things, what are the 5 things that you would say are 5 things that every single Orange County kid experiences just by the fact that they are around in 2026 living in Orange County? What are the things that every single person experiences? Okay, so I wrote down a couple as well, right? Or at least like the majority of them. Most people are gated community livers. Most people are surfers. Most people are Starbucks drinkers. Most are TikTokers. Most are UC college attenders. Most are beachgoers. And if we had in our mind that when we heard the idea of an adolescent kid or a teen living in Orange County, if all of a sudden we had a picture in his head of exactly this person, then anyone that differed in some way, it wouldn't be all these things that we would focus on. It would be the 1 or 2 things that differed from them. That's what would make a story important. So your task right now is, if this is the expected convention, write a small little story, 3 or 4 sentences, about a conventional OC kid, and make one difference in there. And we as a class on Monday are going to come in and are going to try to uncover what that difference is. So I'm going to watch your videos on Monday morning early before class. That's why you'll see this is all due on Sunday night at 1 o'clock. So I can come in at 6:30 and kind of look at your things and make them ready for class. Okay? So now understanding this can help us kind of look at these stories in a different way. Because once we see 3 stories at work, we get in our head that, oh my goodness, there is a convention. There is something that every single reader knew about stories like this, and there are some wrinkles in all 3, in 2, or in 1 that should make us say, that's supposed to teach us something. Okay, so here's a question. While it might be easy for us today to understand the convention of a kid living in Orange County, or even to understand the convention of a Western movie, what might be the difficulty of trying to understand the conventions of Torah? Okay? So here are 2 answers that Robert Alter gives. Number 1, we don't live in biblical times, so how are we supposed to know what the biblical conventions are? We just don't know them. We don't know what was so obvious to a person living back then, what their conventions are. They didn't know what a convention of a Western was. They didn't know what the convention of a Orange County kid was, right? Number 2, when we see few stories that are similar, how do we know which is the convention and which story is the one with the adaptation? Maybe all the stories have an adaptation, and people just knew what the convention was, meaning we see 3 stories here, and actually the convention might be a story that's outside of the Bible. That actually we're coming into the Bible and reading, and our reader is reading that with the convention in their head, and they're seeing the difference here, the difference here, the difference here, and that's teaching them something. So if we don't know what the convention is, how we know what to pay attention to and what not to pay attention to? Okay. So before we start to understand which is the convention and which is the story that has the wrinkle, let's learn about something called a type scene, okay? And this is a really cool thing. Students of Homer, right? So you know Homer from the Iliad and Odyssey. Students of Homer generally agree that in the great Greek epics, there is something called type scenes, a set expected pattern of events that always occurs and allows the, not the ready, but allows the reader, allows the, sorry, and allows the reader to focus on not what is the same in each scene, but what is different. The type scene of a visit, for example, in a Greek epic always unfolds like this. Number one, the guest approaches. Number two, the guest is spotted. Number three, the guest is greeted. Number four, the guest is taken by the hand. Number five, the guest is led into the room. Number six, the guest is taken to a seat of honor. Number seven, the guest is asked to eat. Number eight, the meal begins. When a biblical narrator came to the moment of a hero marriage, both the speaker and the reader were aware that the scene had to unfold in a particular way according to a particular set order. If the order was changed or some part of the order was not included, that told the audience something very clearly and significant. Just like the missing hand of the Western hero who didn't have a usable hand, so he had to do something different. So for instance, right, if you all know, right, what happens when you come to Kabbalat Shabbat on Friday. You know who will be standing in front of you. You know the song that will be sung first. You know that if there is a person presenting Senior Devar Torah, they're sitting in the Devar Torah chair. You know that when you hear the words, Hine Matov, right, how good it is, you know what's going to be up on the screen. And the moment that one of those things changes, that's what makes you say, wait a second. And this is exactly what Robert Alter is talking about. There is a type scene, there is kind of an image in your mind of exactly what happens in a normal Kabbalat Shabbat. And that allows you to say, none of that is important when I see someone writing about it. What's important is the one thing that's not according to plan. That's what I need to focus on. That's the thing that's going to tell me something of significance. Okay, so at this point you have a video to watch, which is about 3 minutes long, about biblical type scene. It's right here, so I'm going to place it into a link as well, but you'll have to watch it, and I'll place some questions for that in your formative. And here it is right now, but you're not going to be able to, but this is what it looks like. So if you're on here, you're the right thing. Okay. Okay. Not every type scene will occur for every major character, although the absence might also be significant. Some of the most common type scenes that I, meaning Robert Alter, have been able to uncover are, number one, announcing the birth of a biblical hero to a barren mother, to a mom who can't give birth. We've actually seen that. A man and his future bride encountering each other at a well. We have not seen that, but the video talked about that just now that you saw. Danger in the desert and discovery of a well or other source of sustenance. And an initial test of a hero. So one thing I want to ask is, where have we seen type scene before? think we've seen more than one. So give me two examples of what might be a type scene. Two events that are similar enough that either one is the type scene and what is the wrinkle, or both of them are wrinkles on a type scene that's kind of outside of the Torah itself. Okay. Here are from 4 years ago some ideas that were submitted by classmates at the time. Tell me if you can figure out what the wrinkle is of a normal. And by the way, I would just say that one thing I added back then, maybe it wasn't, it's not as popular today, but we wrote leggings wearing. Okay, so here we go. So this is what it feels like to live in the OC. Tyler thought as he went about his day. I leave my house, wave to the guard at the gate, pick up my Starbucks skinny latte while recording my YouTube video of the day. Then, of course, it's to the beach for some surfing, leaving with enough time to get home and put those finishing touches on my UCSB application. Okay? Do you see the wrinkle in that? Okay. Number two. Billy wakes up in the morning from a knock on his bedroom door by his mother and the announcement that breakfast is ready. He opens his phone to check his social media and text messages from last night. OMG. The likes of that TikTok hit the roof, and the pajama and the song he used, totally banger. So Billy gets dressed in his pajamas and walks to the kitchen. His brother asks him if he wants to go to the beach today and instantly says no. He would much rather flop around and play video games. After eating, he goes outside and gets in his new Jeep Cherokee that he got for his 16th birthday and drives out of his gated community to get Starbucks. Where's the wrinkle? Next one. Katie's day began with an early morning surfing session. Once finished, she changed her wetsuit for some Lululemon Lycra, and then it's a stop at Portola for her favorite drink. On the way home, she passes the guard at the gate, and then it's TikTok time. Katie hopes that someone at the UCLA admin team committee is watching because her moves are sure to be a resume booster. Okay. E.H. Gombrich says, when we can anticipate, we need not listen. What is this talking about? Explain this phrase. So, Ed Greenstein, our guiding question for what comes next. It's obvious that the Torah does not tell everything that happened in its world, even within its own time frame. It does not relate, for example, what Abraham did during the first 75 years of his life. Of all that Abraham did later, the Torah selects two stories in which he represents his wife as a sister. For what reason does such behavior merit a double recounting in a narrative that omits nearly all description of Abraham as father and husband? Right? Why would the Torah say this? It seems so random. It seems so strange. There's so much more that the Torah can talk about. So much more that we, the reader, want to know about. We want to know about Abraham as a dad. We want to know about Abraham as a husband. And yet this is what we know. What? That's crazy. This is what the Torah is spending time on? Okay. So, now, is there a new hypothesis that you have after kind of hearing about the type scene, after hearing about, yes, an entrance, do we have a new idea of what's going on here? Okay. Let's set the scene for wife as sister number one more time. So read through this, right, the story one more time, because right after this, 5 sentences later, after the initial blessing, after God walks Abraham through the land that he will one day get, we get the story of Abraham going down to Egypt and having this whole story fall out, right? My wife is actually my sister, okay? So let's go ahead and read the story, and do me a favor, because what I'd like you to do for our Monday class is to make yourself a chart, one side being Genesis 12, the other side being Genesis 20, and try to outline the parts of the story that Genesis 12 has, and try to anything that's similar kind of place on the same line as 20, anything that's different kind of place maybe in a different color or in a different place. So I want you to be able to come to class, because we're going to have a bunch of questions about these two moments that I want you to have this chart available. Right? When you finish that chart, please take a picture of it and place it in your homework. Okay. So let's go over. Here are kind of the pieces that you can build your outline with. There's famine in the land. Abraham went down to Egypt to stay for a while there, since the famine was severe in the land and he was about to enter Egypt. He said to his wife Sarai, I know what a beautiful woman you are. If the Egyptians see you and think she's my wife, they will kill me and let you live. Please say that you're my sister, that it may go well with me because of you, that I may remain alive thanks to you. Okay, so you should be able to have, there's some things there that will go into your outline. Number 2, when Abraham enters Egypt and the Egyptians saw how very beautiful the woman was, Pharaoh's officials saw her and praised her to Pharaoh, and the woman was taken into Pharaoh's place, and because of her, it went well with Abraham. He acquired sheep, ox, asses, mules, males and female slaves, female donkeys, and camels. By the way, right, a question is, who was one of those female slaves? What's our assumption? Exactly. Okay. But God struck Pharaoh and his household with mighty plagues on account of Sarai, the wife of Abram. Pharaoh sent for Abram and said, "What is this you've done to me? Why did you not tell me that she was your wife? Why did you say she's my sister, so that I took her as a wife? Now here is your wife, take her and go." And Pharaoh put men in charge of him, and they sent him off with his wife and all that he possessed from Egypt. And lastly, Avram went up from the Negev with his wife and all that he possessed, together with Lot. Now Avram was very rich in cattle, silver, and gold. And what follows, of course, is the separation from Lot. Okay? So you should be able to fill out this either in 6 steps or more. But again, leave space so we can kind of write what's similar, write what's different in Genesis 20. Here we go. Right? Genesis 20. While Abraham stayed for a while in Gerar, Abraham said of Sarah his wife, "She is my sister." So King of Avimelech of Gerar had Sarah brought to him. Okay, so start filling in your outline. Number 2. But God said to Avimelech in a dream by night, and said to him, "You are to die because of the woman that you have taken, for she is a married woman." Now Avimelech had not approached her. He said, "O Lord, will you slay people even though innocent?" Right? Will you kill innocent people? Who said that before? He said to himself, "She is my sister." And she also said, "He is my brother. When I did this, my heart was blameless and my hands were clean." Okay, add that to your what's new, what's same. And God said to him in the dream, "I knew that you did this with a blameless heart, so I kept you from sinning against me. This is why I did not let you touch her. Therefore restore the man's wife, since he is a prophet. He will pray for you to save your life. If you fail to restore her, know that you shall die, you and all that is yours." The next morning, Avimelech called his servants and told them all that had happened, and the men were greatly frightened. Then Avimelech summoned Abraham and said to him, "What have you done to us? What wrong have I done to you that you should bring so great a guilt upon me and my kingdom? You have done to me things that ought not to have been done." What then, Avimelech demanded of Abraham, was your purpose in doing this thing? Okay, place that in your outline. "I thought," said Abraham, "surely there is no fear of God in this place, and they will want to kill me because of my wife. And besides, she is in truth my sister. She's my father's daughter, though not my mother's, and she became my wife. So when God made me wander from my father's house, I said to her, 'Let this be kindness that you shall do for me. Whatever place we come to, say there of me, he is my brother.'" What are you adding to the, right? Next. Avimelech took sheep and ox and males and female slaves and gave them to Abraham. He returned his wife Sarah to him, and Avimelech said, "Here, my land is before you. Settle where you please." And Sarah said to him, and to Sarah he said, "I give your brother 1,000 pieces of silver. This will be for you as and no one's really quite sure what this means, a covering of the eyes before all who are with you. And you are cleared before everyone." So add this to your outline and explain to me what you think this means, a covering of the eyes. What is Avimelech saying to Sarah? Give your brother 1,000 pieces of silver, and this will be for you as a covering of the eyes before all who are with you. What does that mean? And you are cleared before everyone. Next. Then Avram prayed to God, and God healed Avimelech and his wife and his slave girls so that they were able to bear children, because God totally closed every womb of the household of Avimelech because of Sarah, the wife of Abraham. Okay? So you should have been able to create that. So at this point, you should be able to walk into class. You should be able to take a picture, place it in your formative, and please bring that to class with you, because we'll be using that as we move forward with the next discussion. Okay? And that's how we're going to end for the day.